Welcome to the Land Your Bet Sports Betting Podcast. Very excited to be back with you talking about the NBA, man. I've been so thirsty to be able to talk about the NBA and feel like I know what I'm talking about more than any other sport. Who else would I have on but KK12, Kareem K? How you doing today, man?
Doing good, Josh. It's almost the season, man. We got like a month left here, so excited to kick it off.
Yep. I mean, we're going to be going through each of these divisions as we head into the season here. It's still September the 21st, so roughly a month away. I'm going to be dropping about a division a week, hopefully, leading up into the season and then continue along with you. I'm going to get Kareem on as often as he'll allow me to bother him for this so we can talk about NBA bets on the daily once we have those slate of games. Like I said, we're going to be talking about the Atlantic division in this one, moving forward through the rest of the divisions, talking about bets that we like for each of these teams. I'm sure we'll get into some conference stuff if it's relevant to a team that we're talking about in the division. We'll bring up that market. Also want to make sure you like and subscribe. This should be about the second video ever on my YouTube page at this point. First one will be an NFL one that you guys will see. So hopefully you continue to follow along. Also hit that rate button if you would on the podcast. Much appreciated. Let's jump right into the Atlantic division here, just for those who need to know. And I'll read off the teams with their odds to win the division just to kick it off. But Boston minus 210, Philly plus 280, New York plus 800, Brooklyn, the other New York team, plus 2,500, and Toronto all the way at the bottom there, plus 3,500 to win. Those are all DraftKings. I would also say you probably be able to find a few different odds here and there. But let's go right into, should we start with the Celtics here? Is that a good way to kick this
perfect.
off?
Yep.
Perfect. Let's go into Boston here, and I'll just give a brief intro to what Boston has done. Out is Grant Williams, out is Marcus Smart, and then in comes Kristaps Porzingis. I also mentioned that O'Shea Brissett is on the team. I'm a huge Brissett fan, so I don't know how impactful that'll be, but he is a Celtic now as well. I will say Danilo Gallinari is gone as well. He didn't even really suit up, so it doesn't matter. But what do you think about moving forward with this team? Obviously, JB and JT are both around for a while now, and they have some interesting numbers here. I'll just say their wins are at 54.5 at this point on most books. So what do you do with the C's?
Yeah, so I have them, Josh, pegged for 56 wins based on my offseason work. So right around that number. However, I do think there's some room for downside here. But let's start with just a metric I'll use a lot here is expected wins. That's the wins based on point differential, which is more predictive of a team's success going forward than their actual won-loss record. So 59-23. So they actually underperformed a bit last season. I think this is just a team. It's hard to see them really fall apart. They just have so much talent and so many pieces. As you know, we bet them to win the in-season tournament. I think that play is good around plus 750 because they're in a weak group with Chicago, Orlando, Brooklyn. It's just in Toronto, there's just not much there. I think one thing that in player markets I'm really interested by this team is Derek White is pegged to have a much bigger role this year, stepping in as really the starting point guard with the absence of Smart. And he was so good in the playoffs last year. He was also second team all defense and was the closest player to the first team based on votes. And so I think he is someone who kind of flies under the radar for them, but I could see him really taking on a bigger role this year, and his numbers should tick up with more playtime. So how can we kind of use that information and market? I bet him as most improved at 60-1. I think that number is good around 30-1. He's just going to be really good, and a lot of people are going to find out about him this year. Also, a number on DraftKings, if you can bet there, is plus 1,200 for first team all defense. We saw how close he got to that last year, but this is a guy who averages like over, he's got the metrics, both advanced and basic. He's going to have a really good case for one of those guard spots, I think.
Very interesting. Yeah, he was second last year, second team all D. So yeah, I mean, I think probably a few people, if they were watching the finals and have been watching the playoffs the last 2 years, have seen those like random series of spikes from Derek White. But I think, yeah, I would agree that the over is a good bet here. I think it needs to be said that like we don't know what's going to happen to Philly. Toronto got worse. Brooklyn lost Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant in one season, and the Knicks probably got a bit better. But outside of that, right, like Boston should probably steamroll this division. To be honest with you, right?
I mean, it's tough. I actually am not playing their regular season win total over. on paper, they're a better team this year, right? Porzingis is a better player and a more impactful player than Smart and Williams. I also think like some of those sneaky additions you mentioned, Brissett. I also think Delano Banton is a player who could be good. Um, but how healthy is Porzingis? How much do we push Jay, and I say we because I'm a Celtics fan. How much do we push Tatum and Brown? This feels like a team that's gone really far the past few years, and they just might take their foot off the gas a little bit. And usually in my numbers, if I don't see at least a 3 game discrepancy, I'm not gonna bet it either way. And so even though I
Yeah.
have a slight edge on over, I just don't think it's the right spot for them.
And I think I know what you're going to say to this question, but I was looking at a few other things with them. Wins, 60 plus wins for them is plus 360. I was trying to find a way if I wanted to bet on them in terms of futures like that, where I get a little bit more juice. My feeling is 60 plus, especially with the projections that you're talking about for plus 360 isn't enough for them to get there. I think they'd have to push a little bit too far above what their expected outcomes are. So
Yeah.
what do you do with that?
Again, like on paper, I think that's a good play on paper, but I just don't see a team with guys who are veterans now who have had deep runs. I think they understand they understand that the regular season, frankly, is just not that meaningful, and that this is a team that I could see resting guys. Again, we don't even know if Porzingis is healthy. It, it's it's kind of a team I would avoid in regular markets, and I do think, like, their ceiling in the playoffs is higher now. I think there's different ways to play it that I think are better when we think about in-season tournament. So, yeah, I'm staying away from regular season markets and attacking those Derek White props and the
Yeah.
in-season tourney, and
Well,
that's about
then
all I have for them.
yeah, that's totally cool. The only other things I was looking at, and I'm not placing a bet on either of these either, is Tatum MVP plus 900, just not while JB is around, in my opinion. The Tatum leading score in the league, also same concept. Too many
Yeah,
other guys now to feed at this point with Kristaps in there. They are an interesting team. Before we move on, I'll just say the interesting thing to me about the Celtics is the new in sort of you have to play players rule, right? And
yeah,
they have now three dudes, right? I believe Chris Epps has made an all-star team. So we're looking at, well, maybe he hasn't. Well, I'll look at it, but they're going to have to play essentially two of three of those guys most nights,
yeah.
right?
I'm still kind of curious about how that rule is actually gonna work in practicality because it's very hard for the league to basically tell a team that one of their guys isn't injured. I
Right.
don't understand. So until I actually see how that rule is going to work, I'm not going to let it impact my process.
Fair.
And like I said, the edges. Tatum actually leading score is one I looked at, and I would play that if Porzingis is out to start the season at plus
Interesting.
750. But I'm not quite there at this point right now.
Got you. Yep. No, I'm with you. I guess we should just move on to the team that finished second behind them in the division, the Philadelphia 76ers. This might be a quick conversation because one, we've spent all summer talking about them already through because of James Harden and his affair with Daryl Morey. And then really, whatever Joel's the impact that it's going to have on Joel, that's the other part of the conversation. So their win total sits at 49.5. I just want to bring this up. They lost. Say what you want about James Harden and all that. Maybe Tyrese Maxey takes a step forward and somewhat neutralizes a bit of the loss, even though the playmaking won't be there. James Harden led the league in assists last year, or was in top three either way. But to miss the play, I'm sorry, Joel to lead the league in scoring plus 220 is one other thing I would say. But the point that I want to make is Shake Milton gone, George Niang gone, Jalen McDaniels gone, even Dwayne Dedman, who, the backup center and now B-ball Paul, I'm fine with that. But all they really brought in was Pat Bev, Mo Bamba, and whatever the ghost of Danny Green is going to be this year. So
And
they got worse.
they signed Oubre in
Oh,
the
they did sign Kelly Oubre, right? That was more
I
recent.
think that was a good signing for them. But yeah, who knows how the Harden thing is going to play out, right? We've seen it both ways. We've seen players say, I'm not going to play for this team again and literally never play for them again. We've also seen, like, when you think about Durant at the start of last season, has said, I'm never going to play for Brooklyn again. And he played for Brooklyn. So I'm kind of taking a wait and see approach. This was a team that was like 54 wins expected last year. I mean, I think if you think about a Harden loss, that is probably worth maybe 4 games. So I have them at 48, expecting no Harden. Um, And so right on the number. I do think, to your point, there's a lot of uncertainty, and so you could consider a long price to miss the playoffs. Um, but truly, this is a stay away for me. Plus 320 to make the plan. I also think something to mention is Embiid is a guy who's had trouble with injuries his entire career. So he's last year was pretty much one of the only seasons, and he has had better, but like beginning of the season, this guy, he's big, and that's a lot. It's a lot of body maintenance for a guy that big. So if he doesn't play, if he misses time, they're bad.
Yeah.
And I think, like, for that reason, and with the Harden uncertainty, maybe Harden leaves and Embiid's like, I want out as well. Something, there's you can play their downside a bit on plus prices, and I
Right.
don't think that's a bad way to play it. But otherwise, it's a stay away for me.
Yeah. I wish it was a little bit juicier, but to miss the playoffs is plus 550. Like you said, this
Yeah.
play-in tournament is plus 330.
Yeah, I again, it's hard. The only way they miss the playoffs entirely is if Embiid is out for a year,
Right.
right? They're just not that bad otherwise. And Embiid is automatically gets them to a level where, like, they're at least going to be in the play-in. So I would prefer play-in over miss playoffs price.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm playing doom and gloom, and once again, a lot of this stuff is just juiced down. But it's similar to like playing the under in quarterbacks, passing yards or running backs rushing yards on an NFL season, where you go, these dudes are missing a bunch of games, like period.
Yeah,
They are right, and so like Tua, like God love him, plus 600, leading the league for MVP right now. Like fine, but he's just still as likely to get hurt as he was before the season started. And it's a similar thing with Joel, who probably needs to like take some like jujitsu lessons so he can learn how to fall gracefully or something, because that man looks like he's injured every single time he hits the ground. Happens too often. So if I was playing that stuff and if I got 10-1 on them to miss the playoffs, I would be looking at that a lot more. Obviously, that would be double the juice of what's offered right now.
yeah,
So it's a moot point. But I think they got a lot worse, man. Like I think the Shake and Niang losses are pretty big. I think Niang's going to be huge on the Cavs for them. So I don't like we've got with the 76ers right now. But like you said, if James Harden is 4 wins, Joel Embiid is like 8 or 9 regular season wins
yeah.
alone. So
Yep.
yeah. So uh, we get to talk about my squad for a sec. The New York Knickerbockers. We are looking at a win total of 45.5 for this team. I want to say, I'm just going to put myself out there. They lost Obi. We all are mad about that. We got White Dante. So Dante DiVincenzo's on the team. If you, Josh Hart, when he came to the team last year, former Wildcat, 17-8 with him on the squad. They were 30-27 without him, but still much better, up there scoring at the end of the regular season to like 120 a game once Hart got there. They finally had the guy who comes in and just does all the other stuff that nobody else wants to
Yep.
do. And now they got Dante DiVincenzo. And if you use the sort of Villanova Wildcats multiplier, then they should also be better moving forward
You're
this season, right?
you're gonna like
So,
this, Josh. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm high on this team, and this was a team that underperformed their record last year. Their expected wins was 50-32, and I don't see much to adjust from that. Like, this is a classic try hard in the regular season type team. They're they haven't gone deeper than the second round. They have guys, again, like Hart, all those Villanova guys, who are not, like, they don't miss time, and it's really tempted to me. So I am playing I'm investing in this team however I can. I think it's a try hard coach who's not going to sit guys. They're try hard players. They're good, and I don't necessarily think that translates too well to the playoffs because they don't have kind of that transcendent talent who can get really tough buckets when things tighten up, with the exception of Brunson. But I mean, I'm playing their over 45 and a half. They're plus 340 to win 50 games. I played that. They're plus 900 to win the division. I played that. They're plus 2,000 to get the 1 seed. I also played that. So I have this team, like, as far as my projected wins on the season, I have them at fifth highest behind Boston, Cleveland, Denver, and tied with Memphis. And I think this is a team that I want to capitalize on for the reasons for the reasons we've talked about.
Knicks fans rejoice. That is wonderful to hear. I love everything you're saying. I think did you take them to? Did you put a tiny little bit on the one seed?
Yeah, plus 2,000.
Yep, that's a pretty good bet too. 20 to 1 there. Like they
I
played
will
the Celtics
say,
really well. Go ahead.
yeah, and I will say that that is totally dependent on what we talked about with the Celtics and them taking their foot on off the gas a bit, because all things equal, I have the Celtics projected higher than them, right? But that the plus 2,000 price, you play on the Celtics downside coupled with the Knicks upside. I think that's a fine bet.
Yep. So for the Knicks, a couple things. For them to get the 4 seed exactly is also plus 650. When I started like just thinking to myself about which 3 teams would be better than them, Milwaukee and then Boston and then Cleveland. And like you said, like I don't, we're not going to talk about Milwaukee yet, but they're going to have a major influence on certain on bets like that. One interesting thing for me, a bet that I already hit as well, and I'll give it out right now, so maybe people can still get it at the same price. Their over under for seeding in the in the conference is 6.5 on DraftKings. I crushed those props last year with conference seeding. Six
Yeah,
and a half, dude. The under is a bit worse. It's definitely juiced down for sure. But
it's not
yeah,
much.
based.
I'm seeing minus 105 for the
Oh no,
under.
yeah, that's right. It was
Yeah.
actually juiced.
I mean, Josh, I would recommend avoiding exact seeds unless you're
Yeah,
playing like the very top of that, because there's just too much unpredictability like between the fourth or the fifth seed, right? So like,
true.
and I think the theoretical hold there is not going to be good, meaning that like they're taking a lot
Yeah.
hold. But yeah, I would play 2 seed. Let's say Boston finishes above them. I have no other team in the East clearly above them other than Boston.
And
Um,
and the under 6.5 is insane. It's basically even money for them to avoid
Yeah,
the
and,
play-in
and
tournament.
another reason is that I think this is a good team I want to bet on for regular season wins is they're very deep. So whereas we talked about Philly, one injury to Maxi or Embiid, and they have no way to replace it. I'm not sure that's the same with the Knicks. I think like they can replace. We saw it last year when if Barrett goes out, quickly is right and there's in more minutes, and there's not much. So it's a well constructed team for the regular season.
Yep, it is, and it's constructed in a way that isn't my favorite because it's reliant on individuals more than just the greater than the sum of its parts. Let's say, right? There's no Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili ball movement cut and backdoor and anything like that with the Knicks. It's really just like it's a lot of your turn, my turn, and they filled their roster with guys that can step in. Once again, NFL analogy: if you have a quarterback that plays a certain way within your offensive system, your backup quarterback should be a similar style quarterback so that they can just come in seamlessly. And that's what someone like Emmanuel quickly brings you. So yeah, love the depth. I do wish that Tibbs would be a bit more of a, let me decrease the need to have stars be able to get by their guys on every single freaking offensive play. But what he brings on defense obviously helps. Like real quick, Emmanuel quickly. Speaking of really good defensive players, by the way, sixth man of the year, the top two candidates come from this division. Oh, I'm sorry, Malcolm Brogdon's gone, but quickly is the favorite at plus 800 right now, right? So,
Yeah,
what do you do with it?
we don't know for sure. Like Brogdon, I'm not betting him. I think he might still be a Celtic. We're not sure yet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I think quickly the right move was last year, right? He deserved it last year, frankly, and
yeah,
there were a lot of people I know who had like some amazing prices on him. I think he's the deserved favorite right now, but I think plus 700 is just about right. There's
no value there.
maybe a little bit of value there, but his counting numbers, frankly, just like usually to get six man of the year, and last year was a bit of an aberration, but you need around
Yeah,
at least 17 points per game, and he's hasn't been there, and it's hard to see like with less injuries now how he will get there. But I think
yeah.
it's a fine price. It's just not one I'm personally playing it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And he's a guy who, I mean, look, with Dante DiVincenzo on the team, a sort of just vaunted six man in his own right, the way he comes off the bench and just gives you whatever you need at whatever point in time, right? Like he can just be the first guy off the bench every time. If you need shooting, if you need someone to go in and get rebounds, if you need a spark, like he does all that. Quickly averaged like 16 or 17 points when he actually started last
Right.
season. So there is the possibility that he's starting a ton of games as well. One injury or Quentin Grimes underperforming, and boom, quickly your starter. So yeah, I'm off that bet as well. I think we can quickly run through the Nets and just say like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I can do, like, really, this is a team that without Durant, they were about a 500 team, right?
Worse.
After he left.
19-24.
So a little worse. I'd expect them to get a little better as Bridges develops. Um, but th- they were 19 and 24, but I think their expected wins over that phrase was a little better.
Okay.
I have them at 40 and a half. There's just not much here for me. I see this as like a pretty average team. Uh,
Yeah. And there's no value on like make playoffs is plus 145, play in is plus 150. Like I'm not tying up my money in Brooklyn
yeah,
Nets stock like
yeah.
that,
There's
right?
better ways to spend your money,
Yeah, like,
honestly.
yeah,
Yeah.
go buy a record or something. Uh, but what's interesting to me too about this team, out is Seth Curry, Joe Harris, Patty Mills, and Utah, and I love Utah Watanabe, by the way. He's now just gonna follow Kevin Durant around, I think, the rest of his career because KD loves him so much. That's 3 of their 4 top, three-point shooters in terms of percentage from
Mm,
beyond the arc.
that's
So
interesting.
for and then the other thing I would add to that is after KD left, they scored the 6th highest percentage of their points from beyond the arc. So you're going to continue to be this like wing heavy team that needs threes and offensive rebounds to win games, but you just let go of 4 of your best 3-point shooters.
Yeah,
Not
my
a great
man.
recipe for success.
Yeah, that could be a good note for Eddie, who's big on NBA totals. Is that could be a good under team to start the year. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to be impactful. So finish things off in Canada.
Yeah.
Toronto,
Yeah. Let's
fade
do it.
heavy team, no more FVV. In comes the sparkling Grady Dick. Jalen McDaniels is on this team. Dennis Schrader's on this team now. I, what do you? I don't know. What do you do with
What do
this?
you have as their win total, Josh?
I have it at
36.
36 and a half. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's been an overreaction of
Okay.
hate towards this team. I was actually, this was the team I missed on most last year. 2 years ago, they were 48 and 34.
Right.
And I was like, okay, they are young, they're going to get better, and they really underperformed last year. 40, but they were better than their record. Their expected wins were 45, so 45 and 37. um, and I have them projected for 42 this year. So on paper, this is a big over for me. I'm a little worried about this team wanting to sell guys, right? Because
Yeah.
their upside is capped. So,
Yep.
you would argue the smart thing to do would be to kind of take it down. However, we've heard in the fake news media, or whatever you want to right, the fake NBA news media here, that like they want to acquire Lillard. And so like I don't think there's a consensus that this team is going to sell. I think everyone is just assuming they're going to sell, but also the draft class this year isn't really good. So I don't really understand why they would sell this year. I'm not sure losing Fred Van Vliet and picking up Schroeder, who is just the MVP of the FIBA World Cup, is a huge downgrade. So how much are you really going to downgrade them for that? Like, I don't know. So I have them on paper as a clear over. I have them about 5 wins over their win total. But
Mhm.
I think the better way to attack that is through their alt totals. So they're a plus 185 to win 40 games. If they're healthy, they should win 40 games. If they're healthy and they don't trade anyone. Like, this team is still very good defensively. Pirtle's great defensively. Siakam's great defensively. Barnes is great defensively. I I have a hard time not playing that. Again, plus 500 to win 45, which is essentially what they were expected to do last year, and what they easily did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, if again, I wouldn't play their flat win total over, because you're going against the possibility of them shipping Siakam, but
Right.
their upside side is just a really solid team that competes and plays hard and has long, rangy dudes who are hard to score on. So I have
Do you
no
have any
problem.
fear? Would you have any fear that, like, Nick Nurse isn't there and that's his roster, and that now we have rookie head coach coming in? Is there
Yeah,
anything to be
we
worried
don't
about
know
there?
the coaches, but like the team didn't like Nurse last year.
Sure.
There was a lot of frustration with him as a coach last year, and so
Yeah.
you know I don't know how to quantify that. Um,
Yeah. It's
so
tough.
maybe the
It's
new
more
coaches,
unknown than anything, right? Like that's
right?
what we're saying here.
Yeah,
So
I
the
mean
only thing I would say with
everyone
go ahead.
thinks Toronto sucks.
Yeah.
They had a bad year, and they still, despite everything we heard about them, expected wins 45. So
Yeah.
I get losing Van Vliet is tough. I also think more Scotty Barnes at the point, like you get Schroeder, who's playing as the best basketball of his career. I
It's fair.
I don't see. I don't. I'm not. I'm not saying they're going to be great, but I could see them being solid.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and yeah, I think solid is the thing. It's really just comes down to are they going to be the same team come the All Star break that they are when the season starts?
Yep.
Usama Ujiri, not a guy known for blowing things up ever. He might have to get out of his comfort zone a little bit, so we'll see what that's like. But they are going to need some 3-point shooting. When Fred VanVleet wasn't shooting last year, they were bad. That was a big impact, but he was also just continue firing, so that was also a detriment to them as well. But the only other thing I would ask you real quick, because I didn't ask you when we were talking about the Nets, is either most improved player for Bridges or Maxey as two of the top favorites there. Do you do anything with that?
I'm not. So most improved is so
Hate it.
unpredictable.
Hate it.
So I found better luck with that market, just waiting for about 2 weeks into the season and then looking at where the misprices are. Um, Definitely
Yeah.
not going to play the favorites in those markets right now.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, most improved and comeback player of the year in the NFL, my two least favorite betting markets of all time. I cannot think of a more obscure award without any kind of guidelines for us to
Yeah,
work with.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Josh, before we wrap, one
yeah.
more. So, like, as we talked about this division, I think there's one really interesting market on DraftKings right now, and hopefully will be posted elsewhere. But it is a market for the best division in
Yeah.
terms of wins.
Yes. I love that.
So
I was looking
winningest
at it.
division. The prices right now make the Pacific Division a huge minus 350 favorite, and the Atlantic Division is plus 290.
Yep.
I just gave my expected wins for each team in the Atlantic Division. Those add up to 236 wins. So I got Boston around 55, Philly 40, around 48, New York around 49, Brooklyn around 40, Toronto 42.
Yeah.
I only have the Pacific as 221. So I actually make the Atlantic a favor over the Pacific right now. So I bet that last night, and I am recommending that other people bet it as well. I think that is a really, really great price for this to be the best division in basketball when you have teams all of whose win totals are around, there's nothing below 40 really,
Yep.
other than Toronto, and we just said we thought Toronto was a bit undervalued. So you could have the best team in I just think this is a really good play. Um, so plus 290 Atlantic Division to have the best cumulative record.
Yeah, I like it. I was looking at that and I was like, this is fun. Obviously, you look at the Pacific last year and you're like, good Lord, all of these teams were in the playoffs and above 500. So that's bananas. But without going too far into the Pacific, there's some probably regression coming from at least two of those teams, if not three. And then, I do think that there's going to be some progression from the Dubs with some stuff I looked at, but that'll just be a teaser for when we get over to the Pacific and talk about that star-studded division. This was awesome, man, for the first one for these divisions, 2023-24 season. Much appreciated with your time, dude. I know I'm going to try to get you back on if you'll let me.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me, Josh.
For sure, man. We'll be coming back to you guys next. Probably take care of that Central. We'll see what we're feeling for the next one. Bring that to you guys. Continue to follow along. Like I said, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, maybe rate the podcast. Whatever you're feeling, much appreciated all around. And until I talk to you next, happy betting.